Well, good morning. How are you all doing today? It's kind of crazy coming from Dallas, Texas to here, because when I got on the plane, it was 77 degrees. And then I walk outside here, and it's like the tundra. It's crazy. And the wind here, like the wind makes it like 0 degrees. It's 11, and the wind makes it so much cooler. But I'm glad to be here. My name is Gabe, as she was saying, and I'm with the Friends of Israel. And it's been a great ministry. I think last June I was here, and so I'm grateful to be back a couple months later in the Passover season. It's a little early for Passover. Passover's in April, but we thought with Ian out of town, this would be a good time for me to come in. Before we start, I wanted to bring your attention to two things that Friends of Israel offers that I think you guys would be interested in. First, do you guys like free stuff? Yeah? You like free stuff? Okay. I have a few of these stickers downstairs. They're stickers that say, God bless Israel, Israel forever, talking about how God is faithful to his people through the generations, through the ages. But if you want 50 of these for free, 50 for free, pull out a pen, pull out your phone. I'm going to give you a phone number that if you text that phone number, you'll get 50 stickers for free mailed to you. That's pretty good, right? So let me quickly give you that number. It's 424-444-1948. I'll say it again. And it'll be on the recording. Record back, yep. And come see me afterwards if you want it again. 424-444-1948. And you guys know why we have 1948 in there? It's when Israel was founded as a nation, 1948, May 14th, I believe. Yeah. 424-444-1948. The other thing is, come talk to me if you need that number again. I know I said it quickly. There's a program we have called Encounter. If you're interested in seeing the Jewish community, ministering to the Jewish community, Brooklyn, New York City, has the second largest population of Jewish people in the world, right? America does, specifically in Brooklyn. I believe there's well over 1 million Jewish people there. On Encounter, you get to see the Jewish community in Philly. You get to go to the oldest Sephardic synagogue in America. And then you take a bus and you're able to go up to Brooklyn, New York and see Crown Heights, where Chabad is, where the Jewish community is, and you get to see all kinds of stuff that happens there. So Encounter, with Philly being how far? 2 hours from here? I just wanted to show this to you because that's a quick drive right over there. And if you want to know more about this, it's foi.org, foi.org/encounter. Again, come talk to me. Get a flyer at the table downstairs. I'd love to talk to you at the Passover Seder. And before we start, I just also wanted to take a moment and pray for Ian and the students at Snow Camp. Because on Friday night, this is what I love about Snow Camp. On Friday night, they hear the gospel. They hear the gospel all the way through, that Jesus died on the cross for their sins, that he rose again on the third day, and that whoever believes in that, trusts in Jesus, has eternal life. And so that's what they're told. And then right now, what time is it right now? 11:08? I believe right now they're getting a message on dedicating their life to the Lord. And so that they're able to look back on this day as the day that the Lord got a hold of their hearts and the day that they gave their life to the Lord in service as they go home, and it's a really cool thing. So let's take a moment to pray, and then we'll start with the sermon. Sound good? Cool. Lord, we lift up Ian and the students and the other leaders there with him to you. I just ask that you get a hold of these students' lives, Lord, and that you would get a hold of their lives, and that they would spend their life serving you, Father. Pray ultimately they'd believe in you. That was Friday night, and then this morning that they would give their life to you, every part of their life. I pray today as we study your word that you give me the words to say and give us a heart that's receptive to your word. And pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. These are the symptoms. Your father, your husband, your friend, he starts saying that life is kind of boring. Right? It's getting a little boring. Starts asking the what if questions. What if I had stayed in the city? What if I had chosen a different job? What if I had married my first love? What would have life been like if I had done that? And you hear these questions, and then all of a sudden you hear in the driveway, pulls up with a motorcycle. He wants to have the fun of it. He's always wanted the motorcycle. He wants the wind going through his hair. These are the symptoms. What is the condition? What was that? A midlife crisis, right? We know the term. We've heard it before. A midlife crisis. And men can go through this. Women can go through this. It's not just a man thing. A midlife crisis. And here's a quote. They did a poll, and here's a quote from this poll. A midlife crisis is a very real, gut-wrenchingly depressing experience that we all go through at one time or another. It's not fun, right? Maybe this is something that you're working through. Maybe this is something you've been through. Maybe this is something you're looking ahead to. I don't know. But the question remains, why is this a thing? Why do we talk about a midlife crisis? I think it comes down to this question. We don't want to waste our lives. We don't want to waste our lives. So early on, we're busy, we're school, we have a vision of what we want to do, we're striving to it, and then we either get to that vision or we get to a place in our lives where we start asking, am I wasting my life? Am I doing all that I wanted to do? Am I having the fun I wanted to have? Am I accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish? And so we ask, am I wasting my life? And this isn't just for somebody in their 30s, 40s. This is for me. I ask these questions. Am I wasting my life? And this is for you. You ask this question, right? Am I making the most of the life that God's given me? And as Christians, it goes even further because we're not just worried about having fun. We're not just worried about enjoying life. We want to serve Jesus, right? And so we ask, am I serving Jesus effectively? Am I impacting the people around me for Jesus? And so we ask that question. And so the question we're going to ask and answer today, specifically, is how do I leave a lasting legacy? How do we leave a lasting legacy? What do I mean by that? I mean, how do we impact the people around us, our family, our friends, our community, for Jesus? How do we leave a lasting legacy? And what I want you to do is turn to Genesis 50. Turn to Genesis 50 in your paper Bible, in your, if you use a phone, that's okay. I'll allow that. It's okay. In Genesis 50, we see the story of Joseph. We see the story of Joseph, and we see that Joseph was a man who left a lasting legacy. Last time we were together, we talked about Abraham in Genesis, and Abraham was called, and God made him 3 promises. Do you guys remember what those promises were? Land, seed, and, see if you remember it. Starts with a B. Blessing. Say those with me. Land, seed, blessing. Good. Did God give Abraham a land? Did he give him a seed or a nation? Yep. And did he bless Abraham? Yes. And through Abraham, God would bless the world. Abraham has a son, Isaac. Isaac has a son, Jacob. Jacob. And Jacob has 12 sons. I won't list their names. There's a lot of sons. I don't even know if I know all the names. Reuben, Judah, etc., etc. One of those sons was Joseph. Right, one of the sons was Joseph. And Joseph left a lasting legacy. And what we're going to see today is that Joseph faced a dilemma, a problem, he and his brothers. And then we're going to see 2 ways that Joseph responded to that dilemma. And those were the ways, I believe, that he built his life on. And it's how he left a lasting legacy that we are reading about Joseph 3,000 years later. So let's take a look at this. Turn to Genesis 50, verse 15, and let's read together right now. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, and they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil we did to him." So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, 'Please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father.' Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, 'Behold, we are your servants.' But Joseph said to them, 'Do not fear, for am I in the place of God?'" And here's such a famous quote. "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Verse 22. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said this to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. What a way to enter the story here. Jacob is dead. Joseph's father, the brother's father, has died. And I don't know, I kind of picture it like this. Jacob dies. And remember the context. Jacob moved from the land of Canaan, of Israel, to Egypt. Right? He left, went to Egypt where Joseph was. He lived a fruitful life for 17 years, finished out his life in Egypt, and then he passes away. They take 40 days to embalm him. And I think they put him in a hearse, right? They put him in a hearse, and they take a caravan all the way to Israel, blowing every stop sign to get there. Right? That's kind of how I picture it. But all that to say, it was a magnificent funeral. It was a magnificent funeral. And when the funeral's all done, there's a problem. There's a dilemma that their brothers face. Look at verse 15. Verse 15 with me. The brothers say this, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. The dilemma is that they were afraid Joseph would seek vengeance. That's their fear. They thought that he would follow the natural way of the world and take eye for eye. Right? That's how the world works. You get or they do something wrong, you do something wrong back. That's the natural way. The brothers did evil. They know they did evil according to the verse. Look in 15. They say, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil we did to him. They knew they did evil. For goodness sake, they sold their own brother into slavery. That's a pretty terrible thing to do. That's a pretty evil thing to do. The normal response in their eyes is for Joseph to get even. They assume their father was the only thing preventing Joseph from taking action. In their fear, the brothers try something. They appeal to something their father said to appease Joseph. Look at verse 17. Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. We have no record of this, though. Nowhere in Genesis do we see Jacob saying these words. There's a good chance that the brothers actually made this up to appease Joseph. Right? Remember what father said? Forgive us. Please forgive us. All this to say, Joseph's brothers were kind of in a pickle here. There's no way, they thought, that Joseph could show mercy. And I think back to when I was a kid. I think of it like this. Back when I was a kid, I had 6 younger siblings. I had quite a bit of siblings. And as siblings, we'd play this console, this video game console. You know, you had the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, you had the NES. We played the Wii. I don't know if you guys have seen the Wii or heard of it. It's the one where you could like point at the screen and use your cursor to point at the screen. On that console, there was the Super Mario Brothers, the typical game. And you'd work through, you'd make your progress, but there'd come a point when you couldn't continue, and so you had to save your progress into one of 3 save slots. I don't know if you've done the math, but I have 6 siblings. 3 save slots isn't enough for 7 kids. And so thinking it would be safe, I saved my progress because I want to come back to it. I come back to it a few days later, and my progress is gone. Where did my progress go? Oh, my brother saved there. Okay, my brother did that. So I run to my brother, and I got, he replaced my save slot, so I got to beat him up, right? As a kid, that's how it works. So I come to him, but he's smiling at me. I'm like, why are you smiling? I'm about to beat you up. And he says the words that every older brother hates to hear. You can't do anything to me. Mom's here. But then I start to smile, and his smile fades, because then I tell him, Mom can't be here forever. And so I just got to wait for Mom to leave, for the parents to leave. But that's the situation that Judah finds himself in. Reuben, the brothers find themselves in. The parents are out of the house. Their mom's gone, and their father just passed away. This was the time that Joseph would get his revenge after all the suffering they put him through. They're ready. Remember, they're on their faces. They're begging for mercy. They're ready for punishment. They're ready to be killed. They're prepared for all this to happen, and yet, what does Joseph do? He cries. He weeps. Tears falling down his face. And I believe he cries, I believe he weeps because his brothers are looking at him with fear. His brothers are looking at him with fear. If you look at the text, they send messengers to Joseph. They can't even talk to Joseph face to face. I believe Joseph weeps because their relationship is based on whether their father is alive. And Joseph, a man of God, went through the work of forgiveness. He wrestled with it. He struggled with it. And finally, he was able to forgive his brothers. He gave them a place to stay. He gave them food. He loved his brothers. And here they are on their faces before him, begging for mercy. That hurts Joseph. That makes him weep. And I hope that we have the heart that Joseph has, that we care about relationships that deeply with our family, with our friends. That hurts Joseph. He weeps. That's the dilemma that we face. Their relationship is fractured. The brothers simply want to know that they're safe. So how does Joseph respond? So we looked at the dilemma, right? That's the problem. Now we're going to shift a little bit, move from the dilemma to the solution, Joseph's solution. And not only are these the solution for his life currently, I believe he built his life on these solutions, on these ways of living, on these beliefs. So the first one we're going to look at as we move into verse 18 is we're going to learn that Joseph remembered that his God is sovereign. Joseph remembered that God is sovereign. And so what do I mean by sovereignty? Right, we hear that word, God's sovereign, sovereignty. What does that mean? Let me explain what I mean by it. I mean that God is in control. Control. God is in control, and he can orchestrate anything according to his purposes. That's what I mean by sovereignty, the idea of God being in control. I think as we look through the passage, we see this idea. The brothers, they wanted control. They couldn't give control to God. They were begging before Joseph's feet. Joseph, on the other hand, look at verse 19. Verse 19 of chapter 50. But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God?" Joseph knew who was in control. God's in control, not me. And this idea leads to verse 20, the most, I think, impactful verse of Genesis. "As for you, brothers, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive." Joseph understood he's not in control. God's in control his whole life. And what we do is we read through the book of Genesis and we see that our God is sovereign, that Joseph's God is sovereign. Do you remember Joseph's original dream? The one that he made to his brothers? He gave to his brothers? He had them, right? Remember, he tells his brothers, "You're going to bow before me one day." And the brothers are like, "No way. But where are we at in the passage right now? Who's bowing before who? The brothers are bowing, just as God said. And what the brothers did was they thought they were thwarting God's plan by selling their brother into slavery. They were actually fulfilling God's plan. That's crazy. And then we see the cupbearer. Cupbearer is put into Joseph's path. Joseph tells him his dream, and the cupbearer is put in a place where he can put Joseph before Pharaoh. And Joseph's promoted. He was the very person that God used to put Joseph in a position to save his family. And then we can look at Genesis 45. Turn with me a few pages to your left to Genesis 45. I think, we're going to throw it on the screen. Genesis 45:5. So we see how God was sovereign in fulfilling his promise. We see that God was sovereign in putting the cupbearer in Pharaoh's path. And if we look at Genesis 45, this is when the brothers finally come and recognize that Joseph is the man in charge in Egypt. And they come to him looking for food because they're starving. And this is Joseph's response, Genesis 5. And now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Are you kidding me, Joseph? God sent you here? What do you? Who sold the brothers into slavery? Who sold Joseph into slavery? Was it God? No, we look at it and it was the brothers. But it wasn't the brothers who Joseph says sold him into slavery. He says that God sent me here to slavery, to Egypt. Your brothers sold you to a far-off land, Joseph. You had no idea what was going to happen in the future. Yet God was working the whole time in the good and in the bad. And here's the truth. Here's the truth. The very act of being sold into slavery was necessary to save the Israelites from the famine in Canaan. God promised to preserve his people Israel, but there was famine coming, one that would wipe out his people. The evil Joseph's brothers committed wasn't plan B for God. The brothers didn't do this, and God was like, oh, I'll work with it. Let me fix this up. God sent Joseph to Egypt for the sole purpose of saving Israel from the famine and keeping them alive according to his faithfulness. That's a pretty cool thing. God being sovereign in the book of Genesis. And Joseph, and this is how, if we turn from Genesis 45 to 50, back to 50, Genesis 50, we see twice that Joseph tells his brothers, do not fear. Verse 19, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? And verse 21, do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones. Because Joseph understood that his God was sovereign, he could tell his brothers, do not fear. He didn't have to fear because his God was sovereign. Joseph's life was a lasting legacy, one that we can learn from today because he understood deeply that his God was in control. So I think as we think about our life, I think the big thing we can take away from this point is that we have to give control to God. And we got to recognize that we're not in control. We're not in control. What are a few examples? Well, work, for one. We go to work and we think we can control everything. We fill our calendars. We account for all the plan Bs and Cs and Ds and Es, and we do everything we can to make sure everything goes perfectly. We think we control work. We think we control our vacations. We plan it in May so that there's no rain, or June or July. What my family used to do is we would have the whole schedule of the amusement park, making sure that if we went to the back of the amusement park, we wouldn't have to wait until lines, and we could take this map and we'd never have to wait in a line if we did it perfectly. Or maybe more seriously, we think we can control how our kids turn out. We read all the parenting books. We do everything we can to make sure that our kids love the Lord when they grow up, that they live a joyful life. But the truth is, we're not in control. We don't have control. Work, we could get fired. Plan Z happens, and we don't have a plan Z, and we get fired. Vacation, it downpours in the amusement park, and God forbid we have to wait for 3 hours in a line at Disney World or whatever. We're not in control of that. And we can try our best, we can give it to God, but we're not in control of how our kids turn out. They could be on the other side of the country, hating God, doing their own thing. Maybe some of you have kids that you pray for that are in this situation. And that's what it pushes us to do. Recognizing that God is in control and we're not pushes us to pray. Right? Give it to the God who does control the situation, who is in control, who is sovereign, instead of thinking that it's us that needs to take care of that. We do our best, of course, but we understand God's in control and we're not. Right? That's Joseph's first response. God is, what was that big word we talked about? God is sovereign. Look we're learning stuff today. Awesome. God is sovereign. That was the first thing. And I think actually that's how Joseph lived his life by, as we've talked about. Because you got to think, when he's at the bottom of the pit, I think he said that God is in control. Yes, I'm down here in the pit, but God's in control. When he's in Egypt, put in prison after doing the right thing, what do you think Joseph said? God is in control. And finally, when his brothers are kneeling before him on their faces, what do you think Joseph says? God, you're in control. I can forgive you. Am I in the place of God? Right? God's in control. So that's the first thing. God's sovereign. God's in control. We're not. The second response we're going to look at, starting in verse 22, is that Joseph relied on God's promises. The first thing Joseph built his life on was that God is sovereign. The second thing he did was he relied on God's promises. God's promises. And I didn't originally include these verses the first time I preached the sermon, but after reading verse 22 through 26, I had to include them because there is some powerful stuff here, and it ties perfectly into Passover, which we'll talk about in a bit. Verse 22, let's read them again. Let's read it again. Genesis 50:22. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. Here's where I want to focus in. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land, to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. As we've talked about, where is Joseph at? Is he in the land of Israel currently? Yes or no? No, he's not. He's not in Israel. Where is he at? He's in Egypt. And when we hear that God's people are in a land other than Israel, we should shudder. That's not normal. God promised the land to Israel, that they'd be in the land. He promised them that, and yet they're out of Israel. That's unnatural. That's not normal. It should make us shudder. And yet, I think that Joseph remembered this. Right? Joseph understood this promise, and built his life on these promises. Let's look at that promise. Turn to Genesis 15. Turn back a few pages to Genesis 15. Last time we were together, we talked about Abraham, and the promises God made to Abraham. This is one of those promises made many generations before Joseph, made many generations before Egypt. Genesis 15, verse 13 through 16. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. What nation is this? Egypt. And afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. God predicted this time in Egypt. He predicted that it would last 400 years, and he predicted that there would be affliction. God also made a promise he wouldn't leave Israel in Egypt. He would one day bring Israel out of the foreign nation back to the land of Canaan, and Joseph knew this. He knew it, and he was sure of it. Back in Genesis 50, we see twice Joseph say, God will visit you. God will surely visit you in Egypt. And would you know it, 430 years later, God does visit Israel in Egypt and brings them back to the land through a man named Moses. I'm not going to spoil it. We're going to talk about that after this at the Passover Seder. So make sure you come to hear about the story of Passover, which is fascinating, but no spoilers right now. Joseph relied on God's promises. And I love this quote by Warren Wiersbe, a guy named Warren Wiersbe. Joseph's coffin in Egypt was a constant reminder to the Jewish people to have faith in God. Let me say that again. Joseph's coffin in Egypt, when he dies, was a constant reminder to the Jewish people to have faith in God. This is the definition of a lasting legacy. Remember we talked about how do we develop through God's power a lasting legacy to the people around us? Joseph had one, and this was a lasting legacy. Joseph knew God's promises. He understood that his sovereign God could fulfill those promises. And because of this, when the Israelites passed by the coffin in Egypt, right? The coffin's not in Israel yet, it's still in Egypt. When the Israelites passed by the coffin on their way to work, on the way to the Nile, on their way for dinner, they knew that one day they were headed home, to their real home in Israel. Yes, the work was devastating, the struggle was real in Egypt, but because of Joseph's example, because of his lasting legacy, they knew that their God would come through. Joseph had a lasting legacy. And so how do we have a lasting legacy? It comes down to just like Joseph persevered, we persevere. And I think perseverance comes through the hard times, through the mundane, boring times. I think it comes by holding the two promises we talked about today, the two truths we talked about, and putting them together. When we put them together, something special happens. What do I mean by that? Well, these two truths. God is sovereign, and we rely on his promises. Separately, they don't mean a whole lot. Okay, yes, God's sovereign, but he didn't communicate to us through the word, his promises through the word. We're just wandering around. We don't know where we're going, right? We don't have a direction. We don't have the promises to guide us. Doesn't mean a whole lot that he's sovereign. But if we flip it, let's say that God gave us his word, he's sovereign, or his promises, but he's not sovereign. All of a sudden, we have a direction to go in, but we don't have a God that can get us there. It doesn't help a whole lot. But we have these two truths, and we put them together, that our God's in control, and that he's given us promises. That is powerful. That's a game changer. For example, Joseph in Egypt. God gave him a promise. That promise was one day your brothers are going to bow before you. So when Joseph is at the lowest of lows with no hope, he remembers, that's the promise God gave to me. God is in control. I'll persevere. Israel in the land of Egypt. God promised us the land. My God is sovereign. He'll make it happen. I'll persevere. For us, two things that are really hard. Reading the Bible, one of them. Prayer, another one. God tells us that when we read the Bible, it changes our lives. The Bible will not return void. And yet there's times we read it when it just seems so hard. We go a week, a month, a year. It feels like it's not doing anything. God's not doing anything. Wait. God promised that his word won't return void. He's in control. He can make it happen. I'll persevere. I'll read, even when it's hard. Or prayer. Sometimes, I don't know if you're the same way as me, but sometimes it feels like when I pray, I'm throwing stuff against a wall. It feels like I'm praying to a wall. God's not listening. And yet I remember, God, you promised that you're listening. You promised that you're going to answer my prayer. Maybe it's not the way I want to answer it, but he's going to answer. Okay, I'll persevere. I'll pray. I'll do it. And then sometimes when we're at the lowest of lows, the hardest of times, we remember the promise of Romans. God works everything for the good of those who love him. That's the promise. That's the promise. God's in control. I can persevere. I can get through because my God's in control. Let's remember that. Let's remember that. Please, the same God that gave Joseph a lasting legacy can give us one as well. That's how we impact the people around us. Day by day, remembering these two truths, remembering the promises of God, remembering our God is in control and we're not. That's how we impact our families, our community, and our church. Not necessarily fame, getting famous. We might not get as famous as Joseph, and we don't have to be. We don't need to want that. But we know that God can use us if we persevere in this way. So today in Genesis 50, we've looked at a few things. We first looked at the dilemma, the problem the brothers faced, right, and Joseph faced. And Joseph didn't get revenge. He didn't get vengeance. He actually cried. And Joseph, I think, presents two truths that he built his life on. He remembered God's sovereignty, and he relied on God's promises. And so for us today, we got to recognize a motorcycle isn't worth it. That's not what defines our life. Maybe I wish sometimes, but nope, that's not how it works. Living even a picture-perfect life isn't what really matters, isn't what's worth it. Because life's not going to be picture-perfect. Things are not going to go according to plan. But the thing that we can build our lives on, the thing that Joseph built his life on, to the point that we remember him 3,000 years later, is this. We remember God's sovereignty. We keep it in our heads. We give control to him day by day by day by day, every morning, and rely on God's promises. Can we do that this week? Let's do that. Let me pray. Lord, I thank you for your word and your promises, and I thank you that you are in control. With so much happening in the world, sometimes we just feel overwhelmed. But Lord, you are in control. You've gotten it taken care of. Lord, help us to build our life on that. We're so grateful for having us gather together, and I pray that as we continue this time of worship through music and worship through dinner downstairs, I just pray that you'd keep these truths on the front of our minds. We pray this in Yeshua's name, Jesus' name. Amen. Cool. Thank you, guys. Continue in worship.